So before we begin, the idea that we had was that Kita and I will be, to warm up the conversation, we're going to ask Stefan a few questions and exchange a little bit with him. And then after a while, we're going to open for any participant to then come with questions. But then before we start, I would like to ask Stefan, every time he starts a session at Schumacher College, he brings his guitar. So Stefan is originally from Venezuela. So he has a lot of Latin in him. So let's
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear okay?
Yeah.
Is that right? This is a new composition I'm working on.
Wow.
Ya salió el sol detrás de las nubes de mi confusión. Ya salió el sol detrás de las nubes de mi confusión. Y doy gracias para esta tierra tan grande, y tan grande y buena, y tan milagrosa nuestra madre.
Thank you. So just there's a few people that just joined us. I'm just gonna ask you. I was just telling everyone about how we're gonna work. Just ask everyone to keep muted. Otherwise, we're gonna hear a lot of background noise. So if you could do that, and we're gonna warm up the conversation with Stefan, Hita, and I, and then we're gonna open for people to send questions. So if you do have questions, you can send them through the chat, and then we're gonna ask Stefan. To begin with, Stefan, we thought it would be a good idea, at least to give a very brief idea for everyone that is here, because I'm not sure how much people are familiar with Gaia theory, but if you could briefly talk about the main idea behind Gaia, and then we can take it from there.
Okay. Well, I think Gaia has two components. One is a mythological or psychological component, which is the myth of Gaia, and the other is the science of Gaia. So the myth of Gaia goes back to the very beginnings of humanity. Gaia is the ordering principle of the cosmos. And of course, she's also the earth, because the earth is made up of the ordering principles of the cosmos. So Gaia, for the ancient Greeks who use that word, is both the earth and the whole cosmos, and what orders the whole cosmos, the meaning, the purpose of the whole cosmos. That's I call that archetypal Gaia. And we forgot that in our culture about 2,000 years ago in Western culture. We forgot that Gaia is the ordering principles of the cosmos. We forgot how to connect with that. We just completely forgot. We've had 2,000 years of forgetting. And when you forget that the earth, Gaia, is a sacred being, you destroy her. You can use her to grow cell phones, grow factories, grow whatever you like, grow the economy. But by around 1960, things had got so bad that I like to think Gaia thought to herself, I need to explain to a scientist who I am. And that scientist was my friend and my teacher, James Lovelock, who I met on the first course here at Schumacher College. And he was given by Gaia, I like to think, a scientific way of speaking about Gaia. And the scientific way of speaking Gaia is that the whole earth is one living, self-regulating, complex system, which we can model mathematically to some extent. And when we do that, we find that the whole earth as one great complex system is able to regulate key aspects of its surface, such as temperature, acidity, distribution of key elements, because of very complex and very intimate feedbacks between all the living beings, plants, animals, fungi, bacteria, protoctista, all the living beings on the one hand, and the rocks, the non-living rocks, atmosphere, and water on the other. When these four elements start to interact with each other, bang, self-regulation of key parameters for the planetary surface, such as planetary temperature, are regulated automatically through these interactions. And what I'm trying to do in my work now, I'm writing a book about this, or trying to write a book, is to put these two ways of seeing Gaia together into a unified vision, to unify archetypal Gaia with scientific Gaia. Because if we don't do that, if we don't recover the feeling of the sacredness of the earth, our culture has no chance of surviving. There, so that's a sort of summary.
Thank you. So I'm gonna start, I think, with there's a sentence from your recent article. So Stefan wrote recently an article for Schumacher College, and there's a sentence that struck me from what you wrote that I would like to bring here, and maybe you can talk more about it. It says, from a scientific perspective, the virus can be seen as the inevitable result of overconnectedness.
Okay.
Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, when we study food webs in nature, you know what food webs are? It's, say, a bird eats a worm eats a microbe in the soil. That's a food chain. When you have lots of those chains connecting, that makes a food web. So ecosystems are full of food webs. One species eating another species, one species parasitizing another. You get the idea. One species doing the decomposition, another, lots of species doing the photosynthesis. They're all like a big web of life, right? So the web of life, that's a food web, but in the forest, let's say, yeah? Now, what my fellow scientists have found, and I also did some research in this when I was doing science, is that if a food web is over-connected, so in other words, if there are too many strong connections between the species, for example, if one predator eats too much of one prey, or if one insect feeds too much on one kind of plant, those kinds of food webs are more likely to collapse. Because if I'm really dependent on one kind of plant, and that plant for some reason disappears, I'm going to disappear too. But then the one who's feeding on me will also disappear, and the one who feeds on that, and the whole thing will just collapse. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So what we found in food webs is that the most resilient, the most stable food webs are the ones where you have a lot of weak interactions and not very many strong interactions. What does that mean? It means that every species in a good, healthy food web is eating a little bit of this species, a little bit of that species, a little bit of this species, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, right? Not just, I want this one. No, so a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. And when you have most of the species doing that with what we call weak interactions, the whole thing becomes much more stable and much more resilient. So what can we learn about it? Well, our economy is way over connected. For example, we depend on China for so many things. So we have really strong connection with China. Something happens in China, the whole economy collapses, yeah? Or a virus starts in China, and because the whole thing is too connected with too much transport, too many airplanes going around everywhere, then of course we get the disease. So I think the problem from a statistical, ecological, scientific point of view is that we're too connected. We've got too many strong connections, and a strong connection is what's the ecological footprint of your economic relationship? If my economic relationship requires a lot of transport, a lot of distant production, then I would call that a strong relationship. And if you have too many of those in the economy, you're likely to get pandemics, and you're likely to get the economy collapsing. Mm. So in short, to be healthy as an economy, as a human species on the planet, we need to localize much more. We need to have lots of weak interactions with our neighbors, and maybe one or two strong interactions with one or two things we bring from China, like tea. They have very nice tea in China. We can have Chinese tea. We can have some culture from China, qigong and things like that. We can have a few products. We can have a few products, but not too much. We have to produce as much as we can locally for ourselves, and then connect with our neighbors, but just the right amount of the mixture. There's a mathematical relationship called a power law, which shows the relationship that we need. Anyway, I've probably said enough. What do you think?
Well, I'd like to explore this question about wildlife. Can you talk a little bit if the origin of this virus is on wildlife, and what it has to do with our way to relate, our cultural way to relate to wildlife, and what the importance of protecting wildlife in this day?
Rita, that's a great question. Thank you. That's a really lovely question. The whole problem with this virus and many other viral diseases is that they come from wildlife. Because, you know, viruses are part of nature. I mean, we wouldn't have a biosphere like this without viruses. They have an important function. But wild animals carry viruses. So what's been happening is we have been destroying more and more nature. In Brazil, Amazon, terrible deforestation. In Venezuela, where I was born, terrible deforestation. Africa, terrible deforestation. Everywhere, terrible destruction of nature. Yeah. And so the poor people, la gente pobre, los campesinos, the poor people, they have nowhere to live, and so they haven't got much food, so they get food from the forest. There's not much forest left, so they go in the forest and they kill wild animals for food. This happens a lot in China. In China, killing wild animals for food has become a luxury thing that rich people do. But in other places like Africa, it's the poor people that have no food, so they go into because their global economy is destroying their way of life, their traditional way of life. The global economy is destroying it. And so the Cerrado also, yes, is also being deforested, of course. And the Llanos in Venezuela, everywhere. And so the poor people then go into the forest or the Cerrado, wherever, and they eat wild animals, and we get viruses that way, particularly in China and Africa. Now, the other problem is in China, they use wild animal parts for medicines, you know, like rhino horns and bits of pangolin scale. They really like pangolin scale. You know, they think the pangolin scale cures everything, more or less. So that's really dangerous because two things happen. We exterminate wild animals in the wild, like tigers. The Chinese love tigers for medicine, you know. So they kill out the tigers. They kill all the elephants. They kill all the rhinos for medicines. And of course, that brings the virus with it. So we have to stop destroying nature. We have to let nature get big again. We have to completely stop markets where they sell wild animals. And we have to stop the trade in wild animal parts for medicines. And we have to change our economy because this economy is completely anti-Gaia, or I would call Gaia blind. This culture of ours is Gaia blind. No puede ver lo que es Gaia. It just cannot see it doesn't understand. Gaia, what's that? That's a new age hippie thing, you know. So now we've got a big problem.
So would you say, Stefan, that the virus is a mechanism from Gaia of self-regulation?
You can see it like that, yes. I mean, from a scientific point of view, yes, you could say that's a mechanistic view by definition, right, Bia? Yeah, if you want to look at Gaia mechanistically, yeah, you'd say it's a mechanism for regulating the population. But that's true on a certain level, of course. It's a kind of feedback. It's a cybernetic feedback. But on the other hand, I prefer to regard it as a teaching from Gaia. It's a teaching. So she's teaching us. I mean, I feel Gaia really is a huge intelligence, which we just can't understand what it is. But it's just the most marvelous intelligence. And I think for me, she's teaching us something. She's giving, like I wrote in the article, and the blog, she's giving us a chance to realize what a crisis really is. And she's giving us a chance to well, we should be able to control this virus to some extent. But the real crisis is not the virus. The real crisis is climate change. And climate change is not reversible. Once climate change moves the planet towards a hot state, you cannot reverse it. And we don't know if we're already in the irreversible trajectory, but it could be. So for me, the virus is giving us a chance to learn how to live well with Gaia. And that involves localizing, like I said before. And this brings up Charles Eisenstein's article, of course, where he talks about this. Mm-hmm.
Thinking about the climate crisis, that there's a question for me that then Charles Eisenstein talks a little bit about that. But why do you think we haven't been able to react in the same way that we are reacting now to the virus when we think about the climate crisis? Us as humans, what made us now all of a sudden worry so much and then take all of the initiatives that we are taking globally to stop the...
Yeah.
And then climate crisis is...
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, you see, the virus is a very small little thing which we can understand conceptually. We can see it down a microscope. It has a very short generation time. So, you know, we can understand what a virus is. It makes kind of sense. And the most important thing is it has an effect on a very small, short time scale. This pandemic happens really fast, right? You can see it. Boom, people getting sick and dying really exponentially fast, doubling every 3 days. You can really see it. You can touch it. You can feel it. You may even get sick yourself. You might even die yourself. Yeah. So it's like there's this immediate threat of death or severe illness for you, your family, your friends, and you can't see your friends. We have this lockdown immediately. So we're really feeling the effect of it. Whereas with climate change, oh, wow. Look, today I've got a lovely sunny day in England. Great, great. Let's have some climate change. Nice, nice. Really good. I don't mind a bit of climate change. Yeah, good thing. England will, although of course, then you forget the floods we had in the winter, you know. But you see, climate change is more diffuse. It happens more slowly. It's not so easy to see it, to feel it. You sort of feel that now we can start to feel the climate changing right now. In this moment, we can start to feel that, hey, there's really something happening, right? But we're still not completely, we can't quite believe it. But we could have such a big impact on the entire planet. We can't quite believe it. Yeah, no, I don't believe that business about being made in human hands. I have a friend who, well, anyway, we can talk about Charles Eisenstein's article in a minute, if you like. So did I explain the difference between the virus and climate change and why we respond to the virus? I don't know what you think.
From what he, well, I personally think, I think what you said, definitely, for me, there's an aspect of the virus gets really closer to our lives. And so yes. It's more or less what you said. And when I think about where the control and power and money is concentrated, the virus is a threat for them, I think. It's something that can get, like you said, anyone can die. You know, Boris Johnson was at the hospital yesterday, very ill. So
he might die.
Then it gets so close, I think then it really makes people, okay, now I need to do something about this virus. And then it's easier, of course, for the wealthy which is an aspect, the aspect that we have been exploring when we spoke last week of how the crisis is different also in the context of Brazil, and how then we see all of the inequality that then is hugely appears for us even more strongly in the context of the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with you. The virus is very immediate, but climate change is too. I mean, we've had the most terrible floods in this country again, you know, again. And people still don't really make the connection, sort of. I mean, more and more, there is more talk about climate change, but it's not like galvanizing it's not a national crisis we all have to deal with, you know, by stopping driving our cars and by driving our cars less and traveling less. No, it's not that sort of crisis mentality with climate change. It's, oh yeah, well, we'll do something maybe in 10 years time, you know. Yeah, it's the problem. Because it's too diffuse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think, Stefan, that the crisis that we are experiencing, even not knowing where it's going to lead us, do you think that's going to affect how we perceive the climate crisis in a way? Is that something that this virus will teach us in that sense, on well, how we see the climate crisis?
Yeah, well, like Flavia, I don't know if you all saw that note that Flavia just sent. I think we need to connect the climate crisis with the virus. They are connected. And maybe that's what Charles Eisenstein didn't do in his article, actually. So that's what we could do. We could link it. And of course they're linked. Because if we didn't have the kind of economy we have, which I mentioned before, you know, over-connected, hugely destructive of nature, etc., that virus might have started off in China, but it would never have got this far so quickly without an over-connected system. Maybe eventually, you know, one person in an airplane from China, maybe there's a flight every month or every 2 months. There's a flight from Peking to London every 2 months for cultural exchange, not mass tourism, cultural exchange. Yeah, really serious stuff. Okay, one person on that plane gets in, he has the virus, but then we know there's a virus already in that area, so we can prepare for it. But if you have 600,000 people coming from China, all over, going to Italy and Spain for mass tourism, that virus is going to spread like that, which is what's happened. So we can explain that the reason the virus is happening is because our lust, our desire for economic growth, and more growth, more and more stuff, more and more travel, more and more this, more and more that, more and more that, has made the world so interconnected that a virus can travel very easily through the transport network from China in a few days all over the world. It's the economy that's done it. It's this crazy growth-saturated, growth-obsessed economy that's doing it, nature-destroying economy that's doing it, that's both wrecking the climate and wrecking biodiversity and promoting global diseases like this one.
Yeah. There is a question here from Gabriel. I don't know if everybody has received this question. He's asking us, there are some theories spreading that the virus was made by human hands.
I don't believe that.
That this virus could be made by hidden purpose?
No.
I don't think also.
No. You see, here I don't agree with Charles. This is my friend. I have a friend called Jeffrey Keel, who's a climate scientist. He gave me this critique of Charles's article, and I agree with him, actually. Charles says, there's a wonderful article, Charles Eisenstein's article. I really like it, you know, it's great. But he says anything is possible. But no, we know from science that not everything is possible. For example, there's no scientific way we can imagine that the 5G network that's being built created the virus. I mean, that's completely ridiculous. I mean, that's so unlikely. I think we can say no. And also, I think we can say no that this is human created, probably. But that I'm less sure of. But we have to be very careful with conspiracy theories and just believing anything. It's the problem with postmodernism, you know, you just believe everything's possible. Not everything is possible.
Yeah.
That particular theory, it might be true, but I doubt it. I mean, why would anyone want to do that anyway? What for? No one's making it. Well, who's making money out of it? Amazon, because of home deliveries. Would Amazon create a virus? The guy, Bezos, is already so rich. Why would he want to do that? That doesn't make any sense to me anyway.
And I think it's as a hypothesis, it changed our focus on all the dynamic that is happening, and we must understand and also as exercise to understand climate change.
Yes, you're right. It's a distraction. In other words, it's a distraction. It distracts us from, as you say, Rita, from really understanding the complex system that's created all this. Yeah, I agree.
Stefan, Camila is asking if you read Vandana Shiva's article. I personally...
No, I haven't.
No?
I haven't read it. I'd like to read it, if you can send it to
maybe
me.
you can share with us. I would like to read that also.
Me too.
Yeah. By the way, we can share these articles that Stefan mentioned. So Charles Eisenstein and his own article that he wrote for Schumacher College, we can share with everyone also the links.
Yeah, great.
Juliana also talked about the article of Eliane Brum. It's a very, very interesting also.
How she comes to climate change. I read it, but I can't really, do you remember? Can you talk more about that?
No, I don't. Remind me, sorry. Also, a message came through I was trying to read, but I didn't quite read it all. When you say Gaia is teaching us, how does that relate to deterministic science? Juliana Schneider. Yeah, I can answer that. What would you like? Hi, Juliana. What would you like? Which one? So what should we do? Should we do that question or your previous question?
I did. Like? Hi, Stefan.
Hi. Nice to see you.
It's so great to see you and hear you. I didn't send the previous one.
I think it was a comment. She sent a comment that Eliane Brum, this Brazilian journalist, she makes this link of climate change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
People know that we have in Brazil this amazing journalist who she did something that relates both rather than putting a separate things, and I think she did a great job.
That's good. You should send that to people. Yeah. But I saw a question there about, is the teaching of Gaia deterministic science? No.
How does that relate? Yeah, to the.
Oh yeah, no. Well, no, I wouldn't say so. Although of course they're connected. I mean, Gaia is on one level deterministic. Well, I don't think it's deterministic because it's more like it's a complex system. So you can't, as you know well from doing the MSc, you know, you change one little parameter and the whole thing changes. Is that determinism? I don't know. It's a philosophical question. No, I mean more in terms of the mystery of Gaia. I mean, I don't know what Gaia is ultimately, but somehow I feel she is teaching us something. Mother Earth is teaching us something. I'm like an indigenous person, you know? I take the position of an indigenous person, like one of your indigenous people in Brazil or in Venezuela, where I was born. If, you know, they're in the jungle with their spears and have this amazing culture, really deep spiritual knowledge of the earth, really deep spiritual knowledge, much deeper than science, much deep. Science is like kindergarten compared to what they know. Although science is really great, but what they know is so much deeper than science, because they know something about, they feel this such a rich connection and a rich meaning in the planet, in nature, and they also have these visions, and their psyche is integrated really well with nature. So that's what I mean. That's the Gaia I'm talking about, the indigenous Gaia, the Aboriginal Gaia, not scientific Gaia. She's teaching us. That's where the teaching is coming from, and we can analyze that with the scientific Gaia, of course. That's more superficial.
Yeah, I just would like to comment that most of people can understand when you say Gaia is teaching us like a metaphor. And what I understand you are talking about is it's not a metaphor, it's a real deep experience.
Yeah, you can look, if you want it to be if it helps you to see it as a metaphor, if it helps a person to understand it as a metaphor, because they freak out to think, oh, it can't be real, it can't. Okay, then it's a metaphor. Good. That person will behave better towards Gaia and towards other human beings. Fine. Metaphor, good. But for me, in my own experience, all I can say is my own experience. I know I've really experienced Gaia as more than a metaphor, much more than a metaphor.
Yeah.
And I know I've done enough research now to realize that experience is an Aboriginal experience. When I experience that Gaia, I become Aboriginal myself. I'm seeing things like an Aboriginal person. And that's really healing. Jung called this our 2 million-year-old self. This is the great Swiss psychologist, C.G. Jung, our 2 million-year-old self. And it helps a lot to read, for example, accounts of the Bushmen in Africa, from Lawrence van der Post, or in Brazil. Who were those two twins? I can't remember their names now. Villas Lobos, I think. Yes, una pregunta. There's a from Clara Ramos to all. Oh, I didn't see it. Okay.
You translate me?
Yeah, she says, hi, Stefan, about Hita's question from the origin of the virus in the wild world. I don't know if I understood correctly, but you said that as poor people have to require going into the wild for food more than wealthy people. The virus that these animals carry got to us. That's what you're saying. Maybe that's what she's.
Yeah.
But how does that compare to ancient people that used to feed through the wild?
That's a very good question. A good question. Yeah, good question. So my immediate idea would be the indigenous people probably knew which animals not to eat, because maybe in the past, people who ate, let's say, bats would get sick, and then that would be a lesson learned and people wouldn't eat bats anymore. So I think certain animals probably carry virus are more likely to carry virus than other animals. So from experience, you can find out which animals you can eat. But I don't know, it's just my hypothesis. And it's a good question.
She adds, do you think this is something from the modern world, like this?
No, I think this has been going on ever since ever since life started. There have been viruses, good ones and mostly good ones and a few bad ones. So just good and bad. But no, I don't think it's new. What's new is the rate of contact between humans and viruses from wild animals. The rate of contact has gone up hugely as the forests shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink, and the animals are concentrated in these forests, and then people need to eat more meat. The animals themselves probably infect each other more with viruses because there's less space for them to move. I'm just imagining. I don't have any evidence for this, but I'm just imagining. The animals are more concentrated, so they infect each other more, and then in the limited areas they have, and then people come in and they catch and eat those animals, and they get infected.
Yeah.
You want to comment?
Yeah. Sorry, there was a comment there about the genome. What was that? I missed that.
About the creation of the virus, there's some well-proven scientific articles already published that compares the genome and prove that it came from wild animals. 96%.
There we are. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Bia, there is someone that wrote a question that I think this question came only to me. That I will read it. It's written reservadamente. I don't know why.
It went to you.
Only to me. Yeah. Stefan, what is your vision about this big nature lesson and the different effects in humanity? I mean, some of us are here, have a good conversation, and others in such pain and suffering moments.
So can you explain the question? I didn't quite get it, Rita, sorry.
I don't know, I don't think I understood. Jessica, can you explain better?
Yeah,
I can read again, but I don't know if I understood.
Okay. And also, can I ask you, I don't know if this is possible, instead of you reading the questions, couldn't we see the person speaking who's giving the question? Can they come on the screen?
Yeah.
Can we do that or not? I mean, that would be nice to see that. Yeah, can we do that? Or if you don't want to do it like that, that's fine with me.
No, it's fine. We can do that. No problem.
There might be more fun, more interactive if it works. If not, don't worry.
Yeah. Let's try. I mean, if it's too many people, but I don't think it will be a problem. Let's try it. Hita, what is the name of the person that asked this last question you read?
Jessica.
It's Jessica. She is speaking, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No, I just sent to Rita because I'm.
There we are, Jessica. Hello. Now I can see you. Yeah. So ask me your question.
Yeah. So I mean, because it's a big difference how people are really learning about this lesson, this nature lesson, and I would like to know about your vision in this process, because I have, like, I'm in my house, have a conversation with you, and other people cannot have the same opportunity and are in such suffering moments, and this is we are learning. We are all learning this this big lesson, but different effects, and not so.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I think you should talk to as many people as you can about it, and explain to as many people as you can about Gaia, and what Gaia is, what you feel about Gaia. So I think you could do that. So in other words, spread the conversation like a virus. We need a Gaia virus to spread.
Wonderful. Yes. Yeah.
I have a question, if I could.
Yes, please.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi.
So I just would like to understand your opinion in regards some permaculture principles, for instance, talk about the importance of parallel to the agriculture production to have animals in the land as well, that it's healthier for the soil and even for the production of the vegetables and so on. So I just would like to understand your opinion in regards to this vegan movement, this vegetarian movement, how important is to minimize the consumption of meat, or what's your view in these regards? If it's important to continue with this animal industry or not, and if it's actually realistic to have a production of meat in smaller scales, as you know, idealistic.
I see. Yeah. Well, as you can imagine, my answer is going to be, of course, the production of meat is incredibly unecological on such a huge scale and such an industrial scale, and it just can't continue. Gaia can't sustain it. For example, you know better than me that in the Mato Grosso in Brazil, they've destroyed a lot of wild nature to grow soybeans, and a lot of those soybeans are sent here to Europe to feed cattle. I mean, it's completely crazy. And it's destroying, it's giving money to people like Blairo Maggi, you know, big soya man. And he's destroying it. It's destroying that part of Brazil. It's so terrible. So yes, but permaculture principles, of course, are very important. And we know they work. And having a few animals is also important. One of my friends and colleagues is called Colin Tudge. Colin Tudge, an Englishman, Tudge, Colin Tudge. He has an idea called enlightened agriculture, which goes back to the old ways of agriculture, where you have permaculture growing, let's say, with a few animals here and there to eat the little scraps of vegetation, and then dung goes into the ground, and you can put the dung in the compost, and it enriches everything. That's true, but you need a small number of animals, and you can eat them if you want now and again, but we've got to have much less meat than we do now. And we'd have to grow food like we grow at Schumacher College, you know. I wish I could show you the gardens here. Lots of different plants growing together according to permaculture principles, and everyone helps a little bit in the garden with growing the food. It's a community building as well as food growing. They both happen together. And part of the community can be the animals that go around, you know, the cows and the goats or whatever, and the chickens, of course, and the guinea pigs going around eating the grass and contributing, but only a small number of animals, not too many. You can also have fish. You can have fish in ponds. The Chinese are very good at doing this. Even here in England, just near the college, we had medieval fish ponds, you know, from the medieval period, from maybe 1500, 1400, a whole series of ponds, boom, one after the other, full of carp, and the monks used to eat the fish. We can do that as well. So yes, I mean, it's well known how we can do that. Blairo Maggi sells almost all his soybeans to China to feed pigs. Crazy. Quite right, yes.
Maria Eugenia sent a question a few minutes earlier. Would you like to ask the question yourself?
Yeah, please, if that works. If it works with the technology, that would be nice.
Actually, I was kind of comfortable with it being just...
Oh, you want to be anonymous? Okay. I'm not looking.
No, but I can read it. I think you already touched on that point a little bit, but the question goes as following, like, you mentioned this idea about Gaia teaching us a lesson, and I completely agree. And also about this kind of indigenous embodiment of a way of living, thinking, and just seeing the world. And it just made me wonder, maybe it's just a very open question about how we actually learn. Do we know, you know, like as human beings, are we really in touch on the ways we actually experience learning, and that just made me think of the educational aspect of it all, you know, like if we do, you know, I don't know, it's and then you talk about like a Gaia's, okay.
That's a great question. No, that's a great question. Yeah, really good. Because to see what I'm calling her archetypal Gaia or Aboriginal Gaia, that Gaia, for a Westerner, for me, anyway, for me, it hasn't been easy. It's taken me a long time to even catch a glimpse of that Gaia. I had to work on myself a lot. So I think what we need is some form of personal inner work with ourselves. We need to look into ourselves very deeply. We need to be really introspective. We need to pay attention to our dreams. We need to, well, maybe put it like this. We could say we start a quest to Gaia. We say, all right, and now I commit myself to finding Gaia. But to do that, I have to look into myself, because in myself I have many obstacles, particularly if you're a Westerner, particularly if you're a scientist like me. Very big obstacles, very, very big walls. Jung said, our rationality builds walls around us, and so we can't see eternity any longer. Just those walls, they're surrounded by rationalistic walls. We lose touch with eternity. Gaia is about eternity. She comes from eternity. She comes from that extraordinary dimension of things, the eternal. She comes from the eternal. So to experience that, you have to work with yourself. It's a quest. My own work, I find, because I'm in Europe now, not in Latin America anymore, I find the alchemical tradition is very helpful to me as a way to Gaia, to the deep Gaia, to Aboriginal Gaia. So I'm writing a book called Gaia Alchemy, where I'm trying to show how you can use the science and the alchemical ideas to find Gaia, to find the original Gaia, the Aboriginal Gaia, the eternal Gaia. But it's a process. It needs a lot of work on yourself. That's my experience. I had to work a lot with myself before I've been able to have that incredible, marvelous experience, which I have right now in my jungle. I might take you for a little walk in my jungle. Oh no, the phone doesn't. No, I better not. We'll lose the connection. The phone doesn't reach very far. Yeah.
So in that sense, that there's a question here. I was going to ask something, but so if you want to, would you like to ask the question yourself?
Yeah. I just would like to comment that perhaps this quarantine is a good opportunity to go inside and deeply begin this process to being in touch with Gaia.
It is. I mean, you can take the opportunity.
Yeah.
I would say to everybody, well, I don't know. I like Jung very much. I think Jung is really, really great. So I would say to everyone, read some Jung. Read his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, when you're in isolation or when you're in quarantine. I'm doing his classes now. Oh, which class? This is from Valentin Seabra, Jung and Joseph Campbell. Oh, good. Yes, they're both great. So, and pay attention to your dreams and draw your dreams, or spend time with plants. Draw plants in your little garden or your window box. Yes, it's a time to go in. Now, hang on. From Tiago, what are we not seeing? We are seeing the economy collapse. I missed the rest of it.
What are we not seeing? We are seeing the economy collapse, seeing a lot of things, but I asked me, what we are not seeing? Can you give us some directions for thinking about these questions?
Yeah, well, my first reaction is that, we are Gaia blind. We're not seeing Gaia. I think our culture is Gaia blind. So we don't see Gaia, and it's not easy. I mean, it's easy for an indigenous person. If you go down into the Amazon, I hope there's still indigenous people in Brazil who still see Gaia. Just like every day, it's obvious to them. But we are Gaia blind because we've been separated from Gaia, from that feeling of the eternal Gaia, the Aboriginal Gaia. So I'm repeating myself really. That's what we're not seeing. If we could see that, if everybody could see that, if everyone could feel that, could experience the Aboriginal archetypal eternal Gaia, there would be no problem, because it's such a beautiful thing. It's so you realize the planet is so incredibly, miraculously beautiful and utterly sacred. You spontaneously, like my friend Arne Næss, the great Norwegian philosopher, he would say, you spontaneously act beautifully towards nature. You have to, because you see the beauty of it. But if you can't see the beauty, if you're Gaia blind, then you destroy Gaia for your own profit, which is what we've done in our culture.
I'm going back into there's some questions that were asked before this last one, so I'll go back a little bit. So G. Martins, which she asked you about permaculture, she's saying, I don't think it was clear, my question, as I was referring to how realistic this permaculture system with animals could actually work in our society, considering the amount of people that consumes meat. Therefore, it seems like the vegetarian movement is necessary.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. The vegetarian movement or veganism is necessary. Yeah, it is. I completely agree. We have to consume a lot less meat. But I think it would be possible to have permaculture kind of growing all over the place. I'm trying to make sure the sun doesn't get you. So we can have permaculture all over the place, as long as lots of people will help to work on the land. It has to be community-based. Everyone in the community who's able-bodied needs to go and help work the land, 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week, whatever they can. That way we could say the whole of England, which is now a disaster, an ecological disaster. I mean, England's a terrible place. There's hardly any forest. It's all grass fields and wheat fields and pesticides. If we got rid of all of that and we had food growing, permaculture food growing all over England with a few animals, that would feed us plenty. But we'd all have to work. Everyone would have to contribute some work in the fields, which is good for you, actually. Yeah. Yes.
François, would you like to ask the question yourself?
Me?
No, François.
No, yeah, go on. Yeah.
Yes, I can. Sorry, I'm in my pajamas still. But okay.
That's all right. Don't worry. That's good. I'm often in my pajamas all day. Yeah, go on.
No, because I guess hearing you, not to be a Gaia blind, you must be in contact with nature, and yes. We see from the experience of isolation that we can move very forward toward the technological consumption.
Yes.
So how do you see the relation between development of technology and a Gaian lifestyle? Do they go different ways and at different speeds?
They can do, yes. So that's what's happening with us. They're going like this. Sorry, how can you see? Like that. Yeah? Yes. Gaia like this, down. Technology like this, up. And eventually everything down.
But technology is very important for science. And in Brazil, yes. There's a huge discussion, for example, that education is going to play a very important role with online systems that are being created. So how can we take people for the Gaia lifestyle and experience when technology is becoming a very important tool for everyone?
Yeah. Well, that's the danger. The danger is that you don't have any more university lectures where all the students go for lectures. You do it online. And that's no good, because you need human contact. We need to feel, the other person's body. That we have to be in the presence of other people for us to be healthy. So it's not going to work to have just online learning and no person-to-person learning. That would be a complete disaster. On the other hand, if you use the technology wisely, like we're doing now, okay, I think we're using it wisely, then, yeah, it has a use. I mean, we can talk to each other from Brazil, England, Brazil. That's useful. But then I should go to my college here, where there's a lot of people studying Gaia or something, and you go to Escola Schumacher, Brazil, where you are, and you learn in your garden in Brazil, and you see butterflies and toucans and things, right? And then we talk over the internet, and we share experiences. That's okay. But the core of education shouldn't be the technology. It's face-to-face human contact. Because remember, we're animals. We're animals. We need. I know you know all this. I mean, you would agree with this. We're animals. We need to have our human contact with each other.
But do you think it's possible to sensitize people through technology, that we need to go to
no.
have?
Well, sorry, I interrupted you. Just please, sorry,
no.
Continue.
If it's possible to sensitize, because when I hear you saying, I have a little bit of this contact with nature, and I know a little bit what it means, but we are seeing another reality where people having a high level of internet consumption, and how can we express this and sensitize people through a technological tool, maybe?
I'll give you an example, okay? Right, so imagine we're doing a class, and I'm going to show you, with the technology, I'm going to show you something here. Can you see this flower? Hang on, let me see. No, you can just see my hat. That's no good. Where's that flower? Can you see that flower? Can you see a flower? So I'm showing you a plant. Can you see it or not?
Yes.
The plant, yes, not the flower.
All right, well, there's the plant. So this plant is in a pot, you see? So this plant could be in my apartment. And I could show you this plant on my phone. Can you see? Let me see, hang on. Yeah? And the flower is here. Can you see the flower?
Yeah.
Yes.
Where's the camera? Yeah? Look at that beautiful flower. And you have the same plant. You have the same kind of plant in your house, because we arranged that before. Yeah? So you have the same kind of plant in your house. I take my phone and I show you the plant, and I say, look, you see how the soil, and then you have the plant, and you feel the plant yourself at the same time as seeing me on the phone. You like this. You are also feeling your own plant right there, right next to you, right now. Yeah? Can you imagine? So you're seeing me on the phone feeling my plant, and you're also feeling the same plant, the same species of plant. And then we describe what we feel. Oh, wow. Yes, I never realized it was so woody, this stem. I never felt it was so woody. Oh, look at the color of the leaf. Smell it. Oh, wow, yeah, and we're doing this with 200 people around the planet, all with the same species of plant. And then we go to the flower. Oh, and then you show a drawing. Everyone goes away for an hour and does a drawing of the plant. And then we come back and everyone shares their drawing of the plant. You see? It's something like that. I mean, I'm just starting to experiment with this kind of teaching. I don't think it's nearly as good as personal, person to person. That's the best. But if we can find a way of mixing person to person, and like what we're doing now. So you see, so imagine in Brazil, you could have a group of people with this is a camellia. You could all have 10 people in the room, everyone has a camellia. And then I come on and I guide you through this process like this, but you experience directly your own camellia. That's the key. You have to have direct experience, and you have to have other people with you. Yeah?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So we're experimenting. I'm going to be experimenting with this kind of thing, this kind of teaching with some colleagues of mine in Sweden who are shamans. We're going to do a course on deep time. Oh.
Oops, sorry.
You're right? Okay, good. We're going to do a course on deep time, like that. I just bring my chair here because the sun is in your face, so that's better. Is that better? Whoops, sorry.
I'm just comment that we are doing a lot of experiments through the window.
And through the window, yeah.
Having very beautiful, because many people live in apartments.
Yes.
Very small, and yesterday in a class, someone said, "My window became." Como fala lupa? Esqueci.
A magnifying glass.
A magnifying glass. My window became a magnifying glass.
Beautiful. Oh, that's beautiful. You should get them to write a poem about that.
Yeah.
Really nice. My window became a magnifying glass. A magnifying glass. And I saw the beauty. And I saw the beauty. For the first time in my life.
Wonderful.
You know, I was reading.
I will cry.
That's lovely. My window became a magnifying glass. Wow.
We have a few more questions, but just I was going to ask you, have you heard, I was reading this morning that the word corona in the music world means some kind of suspension. And it can, in a music sheet, there's this symbol that is the corona that I don't know much about music, but this little article said that it means suspension, and it's also a moment before a solo begins. That can be an improvisation, and I found it very beautiful that that's actually the meaning of the word. Camila, would you like to ask
like a pause?
Yeah, like a pause. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Hi, Stefan.
Hello. Hi. How are you?
Good, and you? So my question is, what do you think is the role of fear and death as part of life in order to reconnect with Gaia and change the way we live?
Well, fear, I don't think is very helpful. Well, it's useful if you're being chased by a tiger, I suppose, or a jaguar. But fear, I think, is not so helpful. I think the ideal state of mind would be never to be afraid of anything. That's very difficult, of course. But I think that would be, if, let's say, Buddha or Jesus, I don't think if they were afraid, they knew how to deal with it. The fear wouldn't grip them. But death is, of course, something that will happen to everyone. And we have to prepare for our death. We have to really, only by contemplating death do we really begin to appreciate life. Because if we think we're going to live forever, we don't start looking for meaning. But if we know we're going to die, then we have to ask, what is death exactly? What's going on? Of course, we don't know. But it sets you off on a journey to find some meaning in life. And from an ecological point of view, from a more scientific point of view, if there wasn't death, there would be no evolution. You have to have natural selection for life to evolve. And natural selection involves a lot of death. The offspring of an organism that aren't very good at surviving, they have to die. They die, they get eaten or whatever, and then the ones that are better at surviving have offspring. And so the trait for surviving continues, but that system only works if there's death. So death is not the opposite of life. Well, Satish, he said something like, the opposite of life is not death, it's birth. So he was trying to put death in as part of the cycle of life. Death is part of life. It's not the opposite of life. It's part of the cycle of life. Life includes death. You have to have death for there to be life. If there's no death, there's no life. If there's no life, there's no death. They're like yin and yang.
And maybe just to complement my question, in terms of mobilizing society or like collective action in response to what we are living in, like climate emergence, if you like, do you think that there is a role of this fear that we are living now with coronavirus, or the fear that in Greta's speech, in order to bring about change?
Yes, I see what you mean. I think that kind of fear may be helpful, but you also have to give hope at the same time. If it's just fear on its own, without hope, without a solution, without a possible solution, then I think it's very disempowering, because you're like a rabbit in a car headlight, at night. You've got this terrible crisis right in your face, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're just terrified, but there's nothing you can do. So fear only works if there's a way out of fear. If you can also show a way out of fear, fear works. If you don't show a way out of fear, then fear destroys you. So I think you have to have a...
Go ahead. I was just going to mention that I think Charles Eisenstein talks a little bit about that, about our need of the modernity and I would say probably Western world to control everything. And then how one way of us getting out of the crisis is that we're going to become obsessed about this need to control even more all the hygiene and how we relate to the world. So he puts that if we exaggerate that, it might become what the September 11 was for America, in the sense that they became after that paranoid about security, and in a way it's a path that can be very, very bad, I think, for us if it becomes that, in that sense.
That's right. Exactly. No, I agree with Charles there. That's too much. That's fear. That's a bad use of fear. Yeah, it's fear driving towards more control. That doesn't work. Fear has to be a releaser of creativity, not a suppressor of creativity. Mm-hmm.
I'm conscious of time. We have 6 minutes left, and I'm wondering if anyone else has maybe a final question or comment. Ju?
Well, anyone else has as well?
I thought that Maria Eugenia, did we talk about his question? Yeah.
Let me go back. I got a bit lost here on the comments. Let me see.
Okay.
Yeah. Maria Eugenia shared the comment. Would you like to speak that up, or would you like me to read it, Maria Eugenia? I'm going to read it then. She says, okay. I agree with Hita that the quarantine is the best time for this quest Stefan mentioned. I believe whoever is here is doing this already to some extent. We are somewhat not Gaia blind. But looking at the bigger picture, I wonder how this works for people around the globe. This got me thinking about diversity as well. Considering we need diversity on all levels, are the blind people as necessary? There is this utopian dream of all humans not blind awaken, but is this possible? I thought about the over-connected network you spoke about, where diversity is not at the center of it all.
Mm-hmm. So the question is whether it's possible for us all to become not Gaia blind, basically, yes? Is that what you say? Yeah, is that the summary?
Yeah.
Is it possible for us? Well,
as humanity.
And humanity, yeah, of course it's possible. I mean, everybody has the potential. We're all born with the potential to be Gaia. I don't know what the word is. Seers of Gaia. We can all experience Gaia in the deep sense, the Aboriginal sense. Everyone has that. In Buddhism, it'd be called Buddha nature. Everybody has Buddha nature. But the question is, how can we help people on a mass scale to find that? That's the difficulty. But the answer is to do what you can in your own life. That's the answer. Well, an answer. For example, me, in my case, I've worked here at Clima College for 30 years. I've always been just by nature an educator, you know. So I've been doing what I can. Playing the guitar, talking about Gaia, writing, speaking, playing the guitar, writing, speaking, helping in the garden, helping with Clima College. That's what I've been doing. That's what I can contribute. That's what I could contribute. Then if you find what you can contribute, you do the same. And then you inspire someone else to do what they can do. And the whole thing, it spreads like a virus. We need a Gaia virus. We don't need coronavirus. We need a Gaia virus. And it can happen very quickly. One person can, like I showed you with that plant, it can be in their apartment, you know, in the city, and they see that plant, and suddenly they feel something. They feel Gaia. I'm trying to deal with the sun. Yes, let me move over here. Yes. Stefan, is Clima College thinking of online short courses? Yes, we are thinking of online short courses. Yes, yes. So just watch the website. We're thinking about online short courses, yes. Do you recommend any book or video for this moment? Well, I think Jung is very important, like I mentioned. Memories.
Animate Earth.
Oh yeah, all right. Animate Earth. Yeah. That's in Portuguese in Brazil. It was published by Cultrix in Brazil.
Terra Viva in Portuguese.
Terra Viva.
Terra Viva by Stefan Harding.
Yeah, so do buy that. I don't get any royalties whatsoever, but I don't mind. What was that question? I missed it. What was that?
How to keep us in this feeling of more love, less rush after coronavirus with this capitalist system. I hope we can all evolve into a better world. Hug and love.
Yeah.
Can I connect that to my question then? Very connected. because you spoke before of natural selection, which makes a lot of sense to me personally in terms of how nature works. Not thinking in terms of the survival of the fittest, but in offspring and. But then when I think I've seen many reflections by many people. This is not original or anything, but the sense that there's something very unnatural in how the people who get affected, who are more likely to get affected by this, are the people in the slums, in the favelas, with less condition. So as though there is something that feels that can be seen from a natural selection light. Also, there's something very unnatural in the way, because it's us humans and we tend to be unnatural sometimes, and how we structure a society. So I think that connects with the other question.
Okay, thanks. That's good. Thank you. Yeah. I don't know if you want me to make a comment.
What do you think?
Well,
yes.
I think natural selection, I agree with you, it's very important. I don't think it's operating very much in human beings, though, in us, in Western people. Because, for example, many of us have children before we get really bad illnesses, and so those traits are carried on to our children. So but I do think there's a kind of natural selection operating on a Gaian level, because Gaia is now going to give us feedbacks like this virus, which will start to control our culture. And there'll be a natural selection for a more Gaia-friendly culture. This culture's, if we carry on like this, is finished. It has no future on Gaia whatsoever. So there's a kind of Gaian natural selection, Gaian cultural natural selection perhaps going on. That's assuming we don't ruin the planet so much that no human culture will be able to survive and thrive.
And then it just happens that it will be the most people with less that we just left at the bottom of a capitalist society. So
yes, that's right.
In the end, pay the price, not only because people in all different classes are feeling and are dying, but mostly the people who are impacted.
That's right. But we can't have society without those people, because they're the people that keep things going, the bus drivers and etc. Until we get robots to do all that job, which I hope we never do all those jobs. Then, because we need people. Sorry? Yeah.
So we're realizing it more.
I hope. Well, the virus gives us a chance to realize it. Will we realize it? I don't know. I'm not that optimistic. I think the market. My friend Per Espen in Norway, I was speaking to him the other day. Per Espen Stoknes. He's a brilliant economist and more. He was saying the market is so flexible, it's going to adapt. So what's going to happen now, I think, is probably more use of technology for making money, like teaching online courses, and we already have Amazon. There'll be more and more and more and more of that. I hope not. As Charles Eisenstein was indicating, I think. Let's see, I'm happy to see you, Stefan. Oh, that's right.
There's just one last question, and then I would ask you to play the guitar for us a little bit. But question from Gabriel: do you think that prayers and meditations are a good way to answer and help Gaia in this moment, considering the morphic resonance field?
I think prayer and meditation are incredibly important. I know that in those moments when I manage to really pray, it doesn't happen very often, but when I know I'm really praying, then I feel so wonderfully connected, and I feel my prayers really being heard. There's a kind of there's a psychological state where you just know the prayer is working. You know, it's I don't know where it comes from. In Jungian psychology, I think it's connected with the self. So in other words, your ego feels more connected with the soul of the world, the anima mundi, the whole cosmos, with Gaia. It's an experiential. There's a French philosopher called Henry Corbin. He had a lovely phrase for this. He called it cognitive imagination. So in prayer, you're using your imagination with a big I, imagination. You're entering the world of images, the archetypal world of images, which lie beyond the ego. And it's cognitive imagination because you're really learning something. It's real. It's not an invention. It's real. You know it's real. And that's where prayer in that state, prayer becomes effective in some mysterious way. So I think it's very important to pray and very important to meditate. Yes. Okay. That's a nice little bird. Can you hear that little bird singing? There's also a machine, of course. So, any more questions? What do you want? Would you like some music to finish? Tell me what you'd like to do.
Music, yes. Music,
okay.
is lovely.
Well, maybe I'll play you something from Venezuela, shall I? Because it's not far from you, where I was born. So this is a joropo from the llanos of Venezuela, which is like your cerrado. Can you hear that okay? You hear okay? Gavilán, 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 pío, pío. Gavilán, tao, tao, gavilán, gavilán. Tú que vienes volando, sobre el río con tu cola elegante y tu pico amarillo. Ay, que cuando te vi, volando, volando. Volando, volando con tanta gracia y tanta elegancia, mi corazón se abrió a la grandeza de la llanura de mi linda Venezuela, donde yo nací, de mi linda Venezuela, de mi linda Venezuela.
Thank you, Stefan.
Beautiful session. Thank you so much. Thanks for accepting this invitation, for your music, for your words, and it was great. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you, guys.
A few things we're gonna share. So we have this recording. We're going to share with everyone, not only the ones that we're here, but everyone that asked to participate. And I would also like to share. I think Flavia will share with everyone the vaquinha, our crowdfunding that I mentioned in the very beginning, and just reinforcing that it's really open and voluntary donations. So please just feel free. And then we're gonna keep having this conversation. So next week we're planning a conversation with Cláudia Matos. She's a teacher from Escola Schumacher, Brazil. She's a chef. And she teaches on ecogastronomia. Don't know how to usually say that in English, but we're gonna have a session in the kitchen with her next Wednesday. And we're gonna share that on Instagram and on Facebook, so you're probably gonna hear about that. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful day. Thank you, Stefan. Enjoy the sunshine.
I will. Thank you. It's lovely to see you all.
Thank you, Stefan.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye, Rita. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Send love to Julia.
I will. Thank you very much. I will. Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye. Have a good day.
Bye bye.